Welcome to Beyond the Bell, Leading with Purpose, a Lifted sponsor podcast designed to bring encouragement and support to leaders by sharing real stories of leaders in action. Jim, how's your day going?
Good. It's been a busy day, a snow day. As we mentioned on our first podcast this morning, it's when this is released, hopefully it'll be nice and warm and we'll all be enjoying the sun. But today we're kind of locked up here in a winter day. But great to have Dr. Darter on with us. Was good to see people at our second Spirit-led leadership workshop, and look forward to the future work there as well.
Yeah, those are always such a blessing. When Jim and I founded Lifted, our goal is to support leaders through sustained coaching, systems thinking, and practical development. Beyond the Bell flows from that same heart, creating space for educators to reflect, learn, and be encouraged as they lead with purpose. Today, we're excited to welcome Dr. Will Darter, Superintendent of the Everton R-3 School District in Missouri. Dr. Darter is a passionate advocate for rural education and the author of the Empowered Rural Educator, Big Things Come from Small Schools. His work speaks directly to the realities rural leaders face: tight resources, close-knit communities, high expectations, while offering a clear, practical framework for leading with vision, courage, and purpose. Will has served in education over 13 years as a teacher, coach, and administrator. He's been recognized as the 2025 Emerging Superintendent of the Year by Southwest Massa and nominated for Excellence in Small District Leadership. Will, welcome to the show. And if you'd like to introduce yourself a bit beyond that and tell us about Everton, we would love that.
And thank you for having me. It's just an honor to be with you today. Both of you just, amazing leaders in our area that we just get a chance to fellowship, have great conversation together, and I'm just looking forward to our time. So just a little bit, I think that introduction was so kind and probably more than I deserve. I just have the opportunity to serve people and to lead in a wonderful district in Everton. Just north and west. I was got to, figure my map out, but just north and west is Springfield, Missouri. And this is my third year going in there, and it's just been a life-changing experience for me, a leadership, opportunity that has changed the way I view leadership. And like I said, just the chance to make an impact with people who care about students and care about community. So I really appreciate you having me and excited for our conversation today.
Awesome. So every episode we try to have a topic. We have some of the same questions each time, but we also like to focus on an area. Today, we're going to be focusing on those rural locations. And if I have to say rural a whole bunch of times, we're going to be in trouble today.
That's all right.
Hey, Nathan, before you jump into that, can I ask one clarifying question? Because I think sometimes people that listen are always a little bit curious about the journey to a superintendent. So, do you mind real quickly before Nathan jumps into the question, share your steps that you took to becoming a superintendent?
Absolutely. So my journey kind of started, I always say I was the assistant to the custodian when I was, 10 years old. My dad was a school custodian. And when I was a kid, I learned everything about schools through that perspective. My parents were not administrators or superintendents or principals or anything like that. My dad, like I say, he was a school custodian. And so I was, you're talking about snow days today. I was the guy out with my dad throwing salt, scraping ice on the sidewalks, and then we'd hop on the bus and go get my friends and drive them to school. And so, I learned about school, I learned about service, I learned about community, from a very young age, seeing what the impact was for schools. And then fast forward about 20 years, I started my school journey as a teacher and as a baseball coach in one of the biggest schools in the state of Kansas at Wyandotte High School. It was one of the most wonderful experiences I've ever had in education. I learned about people, learned about caring for folks, learned about motivating students to learn. Our baseball team, we were 0 and a million for a couple decades, and then we built a great team of coaches, a great team of support, and really changed that culture from going 0 and a million to going, 17 and 3 in about 3 years. So it really was a testament to culture and some things I learned that I talk a little bit about in the book, building that culture that connects people, to the bigger mission. From there, had the opportunity to work with some amazing leaders in Southwest Missouri as we started our family, and from Dr. K to Dr. Loden to just amazing folks in Nixa, and continued development as a leader, continued development as a teacher, understanding what it meant to make, instructional decisions, data-informed decisions, all of those technical pieces that you have to make the impact, right, as a servant leader and as a principal. Then I moved into principalship in Nevada in the jaws of COVID. So my first year, and I think that's where I met Dr. Cummins, but that my first year in Nevada was during COVID. And so I learned a lot, and I learned a lot fast, not just about how to do the job, but the symbolic side of leadership, that the things we do and the things we say make an impact on those around us, right? And so learned a lot there, moved again back to Springfield with my family after that experience after COVID, and moved into superintendency. So my journey was a little different. I went straight from a teacher to a high school principal of about 875 students. That was a big jump, and then moved again into that district leadership spot, here in Everton, and just again have had so many wonderful experiences along the way. I often joke with my wife and say I really was that guy that had 30 years experience by the time I was 20 because of my early experiences with my dad working in schools. But yeah, the journey was good, and it is good, and it's still going to serve and make an impact for others.
Thank you for sharing that. And my journey was a little different. My dad was a carpet installer, but I share that story often of all that I learned working with dad in the summers growing up, because you do learn about service and work, and um,
Yes.
so thanks for sharing that. Sorry to interrupt, Nathan, but
Nope.
that was good to hear.
I'm very glad that you asked him about that. Okay, so let's talk about your experience in small districts and and your book. So, what inspired you to write the Empowered Rural Education Leader, and what did you feel leaders most needed to hear right now?
Well, I've been trying to write this book for several years, and failure after failure after failure is what I would say. Trying to get it out and say it the right way and the way that I mean it. And it just wasn't the right time, and the longer I begin to serve, the longer I begin to be, especially as a superintendent, learn about the folks and dynamics of teams and communities and the needs of staff and students, the more it became clearer and clearer. So this past summer, I was at Yosemite with my family, looking up at, El Capitan and Half Dome and these amazing mountains, right? And I just had this grace. I would believe it was from the Lord, but I had this grace that just said, now's the time to get this book going. And so I had all of my notes, I had all of my stories, and came home, sat down, and wrote the book in about 4.5 days. My wife was so kind. She kept coming and saying, "Hey, what do you need from me?" And I was like, "Just more coffee in my, walnut mug would be great." And she was so supportive, and my kids were supportive, and I would go to the living room and I'd read certain parts to them, and they would say, "That's awesome," or "We don't like that," just had that immediate feedback right there with my family. And so then after the book was done, I kind of thought, okay, I did it, right? Like I wrote the book, and this is what I was supposed to do. And then went through the editing process, which was quite intensive, clarifying things and making sure it was saying what I wanted it to say. Because I think, going to the second part of your question, I really wanted to speak to the amazing work that's happening in rural education, especially in the state of Missouri, but across the country. The subtitle of my book is, it's a framework for from America's small schools and why it matters everywhere. Because I think whether you're in a small school or you're in a big district, there's some tried and true principles, right? About caring for others, about empowering people, about building toward a common mission and goal about building a strong culture. Whether you're in a small school or a big school, those things matter. And so my goal was to celebrate rural districts. There's people whose names, in that book that you would never know, unless you read the book and you find out the part that they play. But that's just not happening where I'm at. That's happening everywhere. And so I wanted to celebrate them. I wanted to inspire folks too, that especially young leaders, that as you're coming out of school or you're looking for your next spot or you're looking for the next opportunity in your life, don't overlook rural education. Rural education is a place where you can make a significant impact on people's lives. And I talk a little bit in the book about this, the difference between status, success, and significance. And the big thing about it is, there's a significant impact that you can make in rural education. And so, celebrate, inspire, but also I wanted to inform, and hopefully I've been able to, have some great conversations with folks, whether that's in the political realm, whether that's in big schools, whether that's in communities to just say this is what it looks like in rural education from some of my own experiences and the experiences of those people that I work with, so that they would have a connection. Because I think it's hard to speak against things when you have a connection to it, right? So the heart behind this too is just to connect folks to the meaningful things that happen every day in small town America.
Wow, that's awesome. And I would echo, my time at Wheaton was outstanding, and the things that I relished was that I didn't realize at the time. I think that's, wisdom and things come with age, but
Mm,
I knew all the staff pretty intimately.
yes,
Um, I knew much of the community member, the significant community members, and it was small enough that I could have relationships with kids, even as a superintendent. And my last job at Neosho, 5,000 students and 3,300 teachers and 700 staff members, it's hard to have those
yes,
relationships. So when you talk about significance versus status and um, I would never say that the work that big school superintendent isn't significant. It's
yes.
significant in a different manner.
Great
Uh,
point.
and as an ex-coach, also that connection, that direct connection with students, you lose that as
Mhm.
superintendent of a big district. You just don't. There's not time, and it's not place really to get in and really make an individual impact on students. So great stuff.
Well said. Very well said.
Yeah, that's good. Um, all right, so from your experience, what makes leadership in rural schools both uniquely challenging and uniquely powerful?
I love the way that you phrase that question because I think when a lot of people think about rural schools and you guys know this from your experiences too, I think that they stop at the first part of that question, which is what makes it challenging, right? And so, I think the things like, tight resources, budgets can be a restraint at times. Sometimes location, right? In terms of where things are located. I know for our community and just finding local business to keep the money in the area, things like that is a big priority. Access at times can be challenging. But the thing that I also really try to assert with those that I mentor in the book as well, those things are also your biggest opportunities, right? And so the things that we often see as restraints are a place that we can bring people into. I think a lot, like you said, Dr. Cummins, I think a lot about the staff, right? And I think a lot about their well-being, and I think a lot about our students too. And I think many times in leadership, we kind of stop at the walls of our schools. But in small schools, especially rural schools, you can't stop just at the walls of your school. It goes out to parents. It goes out to partnerships. It goes out to the community, whether that's churches or, commerce groups or businesses that they want to play a role in students' lives. And so I think, something that makes it very unique in rural education is the impact is so close. And so when you connect a partner or a business and you say, okay, for example, we're wanting to do registered youth apprenticeships, and your business is helping this student get more than just a diploma. They're having a diploma plus mindset, right? And they're getting a diploma and an apprenticeship, right? Before they graduate. That's powerful. And that's something that, businesses in bigger districts may have that, that experience is, like I said, matters everywhere, right? But in a small district, it's personal, and it matters to that student, matters to that business. But if I'm honest, it also matters to the community because we also want those kids to come back and invest in our community that they came from. And so I think that sense of school pride, I think that sense of district pride, of community pride is so unique, especially in small rural areas. And it's an opportunity that can be tapped for the good of others.
So
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
I was just going to say, the powerful piece and um, for those that are in your position in a maybe just starting
Sure.
in that small school, you talk about the power of those relationships. How did you create those? What was your I'm going to have to get out of my office
That's right.
moment?
That's right. So I think it happened pretty early on, and I do talk a little bit about this in our book, in the book. So we had my first winter as a superintendent. Our HVAC system just failed, right? And it was cold, and it was very, very cold, cold like today almost. And so we just realized we didn't have a very good partner in that area. They were not based in our local area. The connection and care that we were kind of needing in that moment wasn't there. And so I remember reaching out to a few of my mentors saying, "Hey, I've never experienced a challenge like this." And through their encouragement was, you need to go to war for your kids and you need to go make sure they have what they need and have a learning that environment that's safe and secure and warm. And so we did a short term and a long term plan together. And our short term was my custodian went north and I went south, and we got every heater we could find. And it was just this moment of clarity where we realized the necessity of our people, the success of our people in our district depended on the effort that and the care that we put towards them, you know. And so fast forward in that story, we found a great local long-term partner that came in and just did an amazing job on our HVAC system. I feel like during that same time, a lot of HVAC systems across Southwest Missouri were going out, and it was just one of those things where it was finding the right partner. And the way we did that was we just shared our heart and we just said, this is what matters to us. Kids matter to us. Their success matters to us. The success of this district matters to us. And almost in this informal interview of finding out values of what people had and if they aligned to the values we had for our kids, we were starting to find those people, that wanted to be a part of something bigger, than just a small rural school in Missouri. We were a part of changing people's lives, and we were a part of empowering them for their future. And it goes beyond the platitudes of the things we often hear in education. It goes down to the core element of we're just caring for people. We're doing the right thing by people. And so that moment was a moment I could look back and say, yeah, that was definitely a moment. And then there's all these micro moments between then and now that really just go into like, what does it really mean to care about somebody else? What does it really mean in terms of that phrase to love my neighbor, And I believe my job is a reflection of that higher call to care about those and to love my neighbors the best I possibly can.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think one of the things, in big districts, we have all kinds of businesses that want to advertise in our venues and those type of things. In a small district, it's an ownership issue. I,
Yes.
I I would imagine that HVAC dealer now has a ownership feel in the district. So at the coffee
Absolutely.
shop, they're going to talk differently about the district and so it's that's another one of the joys of a smaller district.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you nailed it. And I think that it comes ownership is such a great term. I love that term because it isn't ownership with a contract. I mean, the contract is there and we all fulfill the responsibilities of that. But I think when you walk into our school and you see the HVAC system and you see the new floors and you see the paint that, everybody in our school, we had about 85 of our high schoolers and 35 of our staff show up on a Saturday one day and paint our whole school. It's more than just, hey, we did a task, and it's more like, hey, this is contributing something that's going to be here, for decades and as a part of people's lives in their story as well.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, some reflection here. So, Will being a superintendent of a small school district, Everton, and Jim, you've had Wheaton, and so I'm the superintendent of a small school district of about 100 students, Westview, and coming from Neosho, there, a district with about 5,000, and so there was so much love in that district. Those there is something different in some of those pieces, and I don't know if it's
Yeah.
the close knit. There's more. um Maybe it goes back to the ownership, or a different kind of pride, or almost just being a smaller family, and that web has like almost many more connections, but it's a smaller web.
Yeah.
Somebody wears multiple hats, or, when we
Yeah.
have HVAC issues, one of our board members says, well, I'll come by and check it out. And
Yep.
before we send it off to someone, maybe it's something I could just do or whatever. And I don't know, there's a real cool aspect to that as well.
What I'm hearing as you're talking is connection, right? It's ownership plus connection, right? That creates that closeness. And like you said, whether it's a board member jumping in or somebody's dad, one of our dads in our community made this beautiful tiger sign for us that we just wouldn't have access to, you know what I mean, in terms of a small school. And he said, "Hey, I just want to do this because I want the kids to have something special." you know I mean, things like that, really matter. And while things like that may happen differently in bigger districts, in a small district that impact is felt so greatly because you're like, wow, without this person or without these people or without this step forward that somebody takes for the good of children, we wouldn't have this piece, right? And so I think it's really special to be a part of it. I think it's a really, but I also think it's special. It's a responsibility to steward, right? And so it's also one of those things that stewardship comes in, and faithfulness comes in to say, we're going to do right by these kids, by this community, and it increases your buy-in to want to do good for those you're leading and serving.
Yeah, that's good.
I was
Well,
going to ask about it, having gone from a $2 million budget at Wheaton to 50 plus at Neosho. I know resources. And one of the things that Nathan and I talk about quite a bit is how do we bring services to small districts that are affordable? And
Yep.
most recently he's teased me with the idea of creating like leadership circles that leaders can
Love it.
learn from each other and those type of things. But for those that are listening that maybe operate in a small school budget with limited resources,
Yeah.
how do you determine what is going to be the most impactful for teacher growth, for principal growth, ultimately for student achievement and success?
And I think you nailed it. I think that everything kind of has to get filtered through the end of the day of what's the best for the students here, right? So, one of the things that I talk a lot about, and it's the difference between status to significance again, is the comparison trap. I think many times, especially in small schools, we see what's going on, and there's this belief of what a superintendent should do, right? Or what a school should do. And like, I love what you said so well. Like, you look at another district down the road, and maybe they've got a budget of, that's 30 times more than yours, and they're running their race for their kids and they're doing a great job. But you really have to filter and say, instead of what's the biggest move I can make, and you have to kind of ask yourself, what's the next move that I can make, you know? And I think that goes back to stewardship, but I think again, it goes back to faithfulness. I think being a part of a rural district, being a part of a small district is a call for the leader to be faithful, right? It's a call for the leader to be faithful with the resources they have for the good of the students who are there right there and then building forward for them. So, when it comes down to evaluating and assessing, there's a lot of technical pieces, but I think that the heart is what's most important in a leader. And if you're, brand new to superintendency or you're in it for a while, but you find yourself in that comparison trap, that's the quickest way to bleed resources out of your budget is trying to keep up with the Joneses. So I think that that's one element for sure, is that call to being faithful.
Very good.
I'm gonna ask you about systems in a little bit, but you talked about being faithful. And while we're on that, in case you had something to add, how do rural leaders specifically navigate those board relationships and community expectations and do it with the amount of integrity that it takes while still moving your school forward?
Absolutely. Well, and I always say it this way, your title's an allowance, right? I guess I'll say it this way. I'll give credit to where it's due. One of my mentors always says your title's an allowance. And then once you burn through that allowance by lack of integrity, right? That's all you've got. That's it. Your positional leadership is very limited, and what it needs beyond that is sustained leadership with integrity. And so, I think the best way to work with boards and in terms of my experiences and the experience of those that I think are really successful in this role, you do the right thing. You care about people. There's many times where I'll pray for my board members when they have a family tragedy. You show up with a meal. You try to do the right thing by people, and you don't do it because they're your boss. You do it because it's right. And that behavior is not just up the chain, that behavior is, what we would call down the chain, right? It's both ways, it's always, it's side to side. The goal is less, I think, to be bulletproof and perfect. And this is a journey that I've learned over the years. It's not to be perfect, it's just to be honest, and to be truthful. And so going back to the heart of a leader for a moment, it really, especially in a small rural school, just doing what's right by people, showing up, being there in the community, being at events, letting people ask you hard questions, and then saying one of the things that I talk about, and I think maybe it's just because it's who I am, but if I don't know something, I'm just going to tell somebody with grace, that's a great question. I don't have the answer. I'll get the answer for you around this time, you know.
Yeah.
Um, but the truth is, it's just I would rather walk away at the end of it knowing that I did the best I could in the most truthful way that I could, and then like the other stuff's going to sort itself out. You may get hit on Facebook, you may get hit on social media if you don't know something right off the cuff. But at the end of the day, I would rather be honest than make something, up to somebody in that moment, especially when it comes to your board or your community. That it's too sacred of a call to make stuff up.
Yeah, I would tell any leader um, how wise that advice is because if you shoot from the hip, somebody gonna figure it out that
Someone's
you
gonna figure it out.
that yeah you can bluff some people, but just being honest that you don't know everything and that you can. But that does lead me to a question for you, which is off script here a little bit.
Sure.
So you're into AI.
Yes.
Yeah, so the AI seems to know everything, although we know that it makes mistakes as well. How is AI transforming your use of time, and how could, because I remember at Wheaton, I was a special ed director,
Yeah.
and you were in everything.
Yeah.
So how has AI helped you gain back some time? What advice would you give leaders?
I love that question, and that's also kind of another passion professionally of mine as well, right? Is that whole world of discovery with AI. The way I kind of approach AI is I really don't even judge it. I just kind of have a curiosity about it, and I encourage everybody to kind of think differently and like learning, right? And so I think I love what you said. I think many times we look at AI and we're like, oh, it's not right, or the things that, or we kind of go to that judging place. And for me, I want to be in a place of curiosity with it. And so what does that look like as a small school superintendent to be curious about AI? Mark Henderson over at the MSBA, for example, he's kind of their AI guru. He and I have had really great conversations about AI. But he said that if, I may get the stat wrong, but it's close. If you use AI in your job, you get something crazy, like wild, like 6 weeks back a year, right? If you apply the AI into your role. And I can see from when I started superintendency 3 years ago, the things that I would spend time typing out, for example, right? So my board report took about 3.5 hours when I first started to really get that to a place where I felt like it was ready for my board. With AI, I can do it in about a half an hour now. So all that time, right, from 30 minutes, and I think you're right, Dr. Cummins, there's a quality check that's important with that, especially if it's going to your board. But all that time from creating for 3 hours is now reduced to 30 minutes. And then I'm just quality checking over it, making sure it's exactly where I need it to be. And then I'm able to give it to people, in a way that's meaningful and connects with them. For me, I do a little video, for my board so that they can see, what's going on in our school in the week, and then what we have coming up too. So um, I like to say for small rural leaders, be in a place of curiosity and exploration with it, but also like it is a great equalizer. So I love my friends who are doing amazing work all over Southwest Missouri, but when I see something that they have, and I'm like, that's interesting to me, and maybe I don't have a communications department, I'm going to take that thing, I'm going to throw it and say, make this look like Everton Tigers. I'm going to make sure it looks like us, and then I'm going to use it. So thank you. While I take this opportunity, thank you to everybody who does great work across Southwest Missouri that I can kind of use that along with you and use your communication department. As it is a huge blessing to our community. So I do appreciate that.
Yeah, I think that work you do with AI and watching you present on that is pretty amazing. It allows you to free up some time to do some more of what you feel like is the best right work, using it in a productive way. So,
Absolutely. And I'm going to have the opportunity to go to the Superintendent Academy, talk with them about that, and also Spring Massa doing a short session specifically for rural leaders on AI, where my focus is, and then it says in our description, bring your lists because we want to actually do some work in that short amount of time we do a presentation. So we're looking forward to that as well.
oh, that's good. Your book emphasizes building systems that reduce burnout and increase clarity. What are one or two systems or practices that have made the biggest difference for you as a superintendent?
You know, keeping the main thing is so simple, but it's the truth. And so in a small district, as you both know, in rural districts, it's easy to pick up all of the hats, isn't it? I mean, it's easy to be like, okay, today I'm this, I'm the bus driver, I'm the cook and the cashier and the superintendent, right? And so I think clarity of roles. I think a lot of times in bigger districts, they do an amazing job of having clarity of roles. And one of the things that I work really hard on is job descriptions. I work really hard on clarity of roles for our folks. And maybe there are two or three things that we're all picking up at the same time, but we know what we're trying to accomplish, right? And so clarity on those things, making sure our goals are aligned, where it's not just perfunctory across the board of we want to raise our test scores. Don't get me wrong, we definitely do, but we want to make an impact in people's lives. We want students to walk away feeling loved and cared for. And also, as adults, we want that for each other, right? So, keeping those main things, the main things, and then working on those structural pieces, agendas, job descriptions, schedules to really add that clarity for folks is really important. And that doesn't come from my head or AI. That comes from us. And so I make sure that I take time to walk around my building to see everybody from the kindergarteners to the seniors and to listen and to hear people out and to hear what's important. One of the strategies I talk a lot about is what should we never change conversation. And I walk around and there is no evaluation. There's actually no clipboard. I just walk around to people and I just say, "Hey, what about our school is so significant and important that you hope we never lose or change?" You know? And I don't defend in that conversation, which is really hard to do sometimes as a leader. I don't say, well, the reason it's this way. Nope, it's just whatever they tell me. I'm going to listen. I'm going to affirm it. I'm going to write it down. Because when I do that enough and I hear enough people, I start seeing those common trends weave through conversations. And then I realize, hey, something that's important to us in Everton is honesty, right? Something that's important to us in Everton is extreme care for children who are from hard situations in life outside of school, right? Something that's important to us in Everton is the ability to create opportunity that isn't here, to physically and generate opportunity that isn't here, which is why we're moving more towards a diploma plus mindset in Everton, where it's not just your diploma. We want every student in the next 5 years to have an industry recognized credential and a registered youth apprenticeship. But that wasn't my idea. That was our idea from listening together and hearing what's important to people. And so clarity is less more initiatives and it's better initiatives is what I always encourage leaders with. And it's more quality initiatives that comes from listening.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, it makes me think about when you talk about the clarity piece and at the same time the job description. I wonder about this being a difference in bigger and smaller districts. Is one person may have several job titles, and that
Yeah.
clarity on mission and purpose. So, when I was at Neosho, I had a team of five, and then with the principals as well. And it was really like I had to know them. I had to be very clear on the mission and our purpose and really connect the dots between those guys to make sure, hey, we're all running towards the same purpose. Your role is important. In a smaller district, everybody understanding, regardless of what hat you're wearing, we're
Yeah.
still moving toward this clarity in connecting that dot and moving like, well, if I've got this hat on for transportation or whatever it is, I'm still moving towards this
Still
piece.
moving. And I would call that, less of a mission statement and more of a mission heartbeat, right? And in a small district, that heartbeat is felt in everything you do. It's felt in everything everybody does, from the conversation when people walk into school, when the kids walk into school, that front entryway where everybody is. It's felt there, it's felt on the bus, it's felt at practice. And like you said so well, Dr. Manley, it is this realization that the thing that I'm doing right now matters the most because it matters the most to kids, right? And it matters the most to their life. And so I think part of that is just that ability to have some humility, right? And the ability to have something that says that in the famous words of the scripture, but I must decrease as a leader, right? My importance of what I think is important has to decrease. And I have to bring to the front things like truth. I have to bring to the front things like love and care. I have to bring to the front things like those shared values of integrity because that's what's going to impact a child more than another, initiative that I'm able to roll out as a superintendent and put on my trophy wall as a success. I want someone's life to look back and say, my time in Everton as a staff member, for example, was the best job I ever had because I knew people cared about kids and I knew that they cared about me, you know. And so I love what you're saying. It's less about something you can find on Google or ChatGPT or anything like that. And it's more about what's inside of you and how you transmit that to other people.
Yeah, I love that. And I wrote that down. I'm stealing the what should we never change question.
I love it. I love it.
All right, I'm gonna
I'm
switch.
curious what you find out.
Oh yeah. No, I can't wait. I will report back.
I love it. I love it.
I'm gonna switch gears a little bit. And so one of the things we always like to talk about is just our wellness and what keeps us centered and what keeps us balanced. So we know serving as a leader is demanding, and how do you maintain your personal balance and well-being while leading and supporting others?
Well, I'll be truthful with you. It's probably the greatest thing that I have done that I would say is attributed to my wellness is this battle to overcome my own personal perfectionism, right? And it's this, I always call it the term bulletproof, and I always call it this idea that, hey, I've got to be the best, right? I got to look the best. And over the past 3 years, I think for me, just that process and the ability to let some of that go and just to be who I am and to be the person that I've been called to be. I believe for me and my faith that God's called me to be, right? Realizing that I'm not the most important person either, but I am a person that is important to others, and so I think that's been a big part of it is letting go of what things should look like. I kind of talked about that with comparison earlier and letting things be what they are and embracing the growth. One of my favorite poets is Wendell Berry, American poet, talks about rural education or rural life all the time. And he says the things that go into the ground are often more important than the things that come out of it, right? And so when it comes to wellness, I think that there's strategies and there's great, like, maintain your boundaries and things like that. But I want to make sure what's going into my heart as a person is really important. So for me, it's the things I watch, it's the things I listen to, it's the things that I eat, it's the things that I allow my thoughts to go to and at 2 a.m. You guys know how that is as superintendents, those wake ups at 2 a.m. It's those things that really have more of an impact than anything, on my personal wellness.
That's good stuff. I would just say at this point, if I were 26, 28 years old again, I would be working to get on your staff to
Mm,
be a learner under you. I think
so
you
kind.
bring that game to the table that you I would say the more people get to know you, you would never have trouble filling an administrative team.
It's really, really kind and I appreciate that. And I would reflect on that by saying the people who have been a part of my life who have called me forward to learn and lead are the people that have really helped me learn some of these things.
Yeah.
By no means is it ever something I discovered on my own. It's the people who you're around. So I think kind of going back to your question about wellness, who are you around, as a leader and who are you connected to? I love just the idea of your guys' podcast of connecting people to each other, you know, and where I maybe wouldn't be a part of a conversation. Your Dr. Pierce's interview that you guys did left a profound mark on me with the rounding conversation, idea. And so just being able to connect to people and learn from people, but also understanding that there's a bigger calling than what you and I have that we think we have, right? So I grew up in Orange County, California, moved to Kansas, and I'm in Everton. And so many people would look at something like that and they'd say, I don't understand how those dots connect. But for me, I think there's a greater calling on my life than just what I see. And that calling kind of leads me into that learning where that humility is paramount.
I bet you're missing the OC right now.
I'm I'm
As you
looking out
sit in your 6 degree weather or whatever.
I'm looking out my window thinking I need to go get my snow shovel here in a little bit and get to work on that sidewalk to give us a shot after this interview. So for later this week.
My
But
goodness.
All right. Well, I have greatly enjoyed this. I'm going to hand it over to Jim to wrap it up. And any final thoughts from either one of you?
Yeah, what would you, I mean, just before we wrap up, what's one nugget of advice you would leave for listeners on this podcast?
I would say that the goal of life is the goal of leadership, because I don't know if I can speak to life. I don't think I'm that important. But the goal of leadership is less about status and it's less about success. Because I mean, you guys are successful. Look at this podcast, right? The success is the ability to make something happen over time and hard work, right? The goal is significance, and it's not personal significance, it's the significance of others. So my heart for people that I get a chance to serve and lead with is that they would walk away saying, I've never met somebody like that who cared for me so well, and so I would say let's allow ourselves as leaders to change some of our metrics. What would it look like if we treated our relationships as significant with our spouses, with our children, with our schools, with the politicians that we are representing us, right? With our churches, with our community. And instead of trying to attain a level of success, or instead of trying to change a law, or instead of trying to get something a certain way or an outcome on a test score, what if we just truly loved and cared about people, you know? And so it's more of a challenge, maybe less of a nugget, but more of a challenge for all of us to just do some reflecting on where's an area in my life that I can show that that person is significant to me as a person and as a leader.
And that's so good. Appreciate you. Appreciate your time, and I guarantee the people in Everton are happy that you're there. But the impact that you'll have for generations on that community are evident. And so we appreciate your time. I encourage you to keep doing what you're doing and keep sharing with others in whatever venues that you can find, because what you have is what people need to hear that are in the profession, especially new, young leaders, whether they're um, teacher team leaders, building leaders,
Yes.
whatever. The significance, the servant heart, the things that you mentioned are the things that they need to hear. So really appreciate your words.
Well, I
Um,
appreciate both of you as well. Thank you for having me.
you bet. So these podcasts are done to support leaders, and if you're listening and you know other leaders that could benefit from them, share with them so that they can listen and hear. We enjoy doing it, but it's only of value if it's shared with others that can benefit from it. So share and like and do all those things that you need to do on social media to get it out there. And Nathan and I and our team of associates are willing to help districts if you have needs in leadership, classroom instruction, the whole gamut. If there are things that we can help you with, certainly we would be happy to do that. In the meantime, we encourage you to be well and keep leading with purpose. Thank you.